Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we are going to talk about the treasure of the Jerusalem temple, an unimaginable fortune and wealth. Shall we find out the exact location of the treasury house where all this was kept and use archaeological findings to help us unravel a great mystery? Where was this treasure taken and where is it to this day? So, if you are ready, let's get started. The Temple of Jerusalem was a place of worship to God, both by the people of Israel and by foreigners who came from other lands. But in addition to being a place of worship, the temple also had another function. Inside the temple was the treasury house, and it contained enormous wealth. We see this from the beginning of the temple, as the Bible itself tells us. When King Solomon finished all the work he did for the house of the Lord, he brought the things that David, his father, had dedicated, the silver, the gold, and the utensils. But where did all this great fortune come from to fill the entire treasury house? The king had money from various sources, mainly from tributes and taxes, and he put part of these treasures in the temple. But the temple also had sources of income. The first were voluntary offerings, as we will also tell you more about this later. But in addition to that, there was the annual collection of the half shekel. Every man from the people of Israel from the age of 20 was obliged to give a contribution to the temple of Jerusalem. This is written in the Bible in the book of Exodus 30, and the person should give half a shekel, half a silver cycle. How much is that worth today? A half shekel coin, it had 0.24 ounces of silver. Today, a gram of silver costs about $1. So it would be $7 or 40 reais according to today's money. But for people who lived in the times of Jesus, how much was 7 grams of silver or half a shekel really worth? The Bible tells us that half a shekel would be equivalent to 2 days of work for a farmer. We know that people who went up to Jerusalem brought the half shekel, but we also have historical records of the people of Israel who lived in distant lands and could not come, yet they still sent their contribution to the temple. We have records of gigantic amounts of silver coins coming, for example, from Babylon to Jerusalem. And that's why it's not surprising that in the archaeological excavations here in the city, many half-shekel silver coins from different historical periods were found. And I also want to tell you that the half shekel is still in use to this day. The new shekel, which is the currency we use in Israel today, we have coins of 5 cents, 10 cents, but we don't have a 50-cent coin. Instead, we have a half shekel coin, which would be equivalent to 50-cent S, but we use it as a reminder of the temple tribute and also of the treasures of Jerusalem. And the great fortune that was inside the temple of Jerusalem in the treasury house attracted many people who coveted these riches. And we also know through the Bible that several times, unfortunately, throughout history, these treasures were stolen. Sometimes they managed to recover and others not, but there was constantly a great fortune in the temple. In the times of Jesus, we also have records through the book of Flavius Josephus that Pontius Pilate, yes, that same Pontius Pilate who condemned Jesus to death, he appropriates part of the treasure of the Temple of Jerusalem, which the Jews of the time see as a great sacrilege. He appropriates these treasures that were destined for God and the temple and uses them to build an aqueduct here in the city. And by the way, this aqueduct was found in archaeological excavations. So the greater the wealth, the more people were watching and coveting all of that. And now we go to the site on the Temple Mount where the Treasury House was located. Come with me. We are now climbing this wooden bridge, which is the access to the Temple Mount for those who are not Muslim. And what I like about this place is that from here we have a really view privileged of the Wailing Wall. See that it is right here below us. Thank you. I know that the Golden Dome in the background is really impressive, but I want you to first look at this little gray dome. This dome and the columns, they are beautiful and impressive, but what really matters is what attracts the least attention, which is precisely this floor. This floor is original from the times of King Herod, meaning from the 1st century before Christ and when Jesus walked here on the Temple Mount. And we know that he walked several times. This was exactly the floor he saw. The Golden Dome is exactly where the sanctuary was, more specifically the Holy of Holies. So in the time of the First Temple of Jerusalem, the Ark of the Covenant was located here at this place. And what else was there at this location? In front of the sanctuary right here was the altar of sacrifices. This area here has no kind of demarcation these days, but through archaeological research and the work of historians, we know that exactly here where I am standing was the altar where the sacrifices and offerings were made. In this area that we are walking now, only men from the people of Israel could enter. Women were only allowed to enter another area, the women's courtyard. And that's where we're going, because over on the women's side was exactly where they were located, the great treasures. Here where I am was the Nicanor gate that separated the altar courtyard from the women's courtyard. It was beautiful, and that's why it is also known in the New Testament as the Beautiful Gate. We remember that in the book of Acts, next to the Beautiful Gate, there was a lame man, and he was here asking for alms. It may seem like a random place, but on the contrary, he is asking for alms right next to the place of treasures. So where a lot of money circulated, and he did this with the hope that he would also receive a little bit of everything that was here. This is the women's courtyard. Despite the name, it was not exclusive to women, but it was the closest place women could get to the saints. Holy of Holies, how did it work? There was a large courtyard in the middle here and 6 large rooms on the sides. At one end was the oil depot that stored the oil for the menorah, Another was the room of the Nazirites. There was also the room of the lepers and the wood depot, and on each side were the treasury rooms that stored much of the temple's wealth, and at their entrance the boxes for voluntary offerings. This reminds us of a biblical story where a lady places a very small value here. Sitting in front of the treasury, Jesus watched as the people put money into the offering box. Now, many rich people were putting in large sums, but a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. And calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the offering box than all the others, for they all gave out of their surplus, but she out of her poverty gave all she had, all her livelihood." This area, which is known as the women's courtyard or the treasury courtyard, it wasn't that big. It was 135 by 135 cubits, which in today's measurements would be 61 by 200 feet. But this space is precisely one of the favorite places where Jesus used to teach. And after him, the disciples and apostles also kept coming here to teach the people and the women. I like to walk around here and see the archaeological remains. For example, look at these pieces of column here. They make our knowledge even more real. We know that a few meters from where we are now, 2,000 years ago, there was a gigantic treasure of gold, silver, copper, precious stones, coins, and much, much more. A treasure that today would probably be worth millions, if not billions of dollars if it were found. But the question is, where is it? Clearly around me now we can't see any room, any treasure house. What happens, unfortunately, is that in the year 70 Anno Domini there will come a great destruction upon this place. The temple will be destroyed. Here where we see the dome of the rock, this beautiful golden dome, was the temple. So the temple was destroyed, and the treasures, where did they really end up? Let's continue our adventure in Jerusalem in search of the treasures and see if archaeology can unravel this great mystery for us. In 1947, the first Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And so in the following years, archaeologists scoured that entire region to find more ancient texts. In 1952, a team of Jordanian archaeologists entered cave number 3. When they entered, they came across 40 jars filled with scrolls, which should be one of the biggest archaeological finds in the history of this region. But unfortunately, when they saw the jars, they were all without exception broken. Because a long, long time ago, the cave ceiling collapsed and broke the jars, exposing the scrolls, and thus the scrolls deteriorated, and practically nothing could be saved from there. And on the last day of excavations in that cave, in the last hours, one of the archaeologists realizes that there was a wall there, which seemed like a false wall. And he goes and removes that wall, and what will he find behind it? A stone shelf, and on it 2 scrolls. But unlike all the others they had found, unlike any other Dead Sea Scroll, because those 2 scrolls were made of copper, 99% copper and 1% tin. And also they were separated from the others. hidden under a stone shelf. The archaeologists find that and they are fascinated. They want to read the text that is inside. Just one problem, a copper scroll rolled up 2,000 years ago that if they tried to unroll, the scroll would surely disintegrate. And so they start to think about what they are going to do. And these scrolls are taken to Jordan and will wait 3 years for someone to figure out how to open them. And then comes the archaeologist John Marco Allegre, and he has an idea. He suggests cutting these scrolls into 23 strips. Imagine taking a text from 2,000 years ago and just starting to cut it out. Also cutting into so many strips because the scroll was gigantic. The two scrolls together was 7 feet 10 inches long. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But that's exactly what John and the Jordanians did. They cut the parchment, opened it into parts, and then began to read its contents, which were all in Hebrew. And when they started to read, they saw that there was a list, almost a treasure map. The text of the parchment is very enigmatic and very different from all the other Dead Sea Scrolls. On the parchment, there is a list of 64 places, and in each place it is written where one should go, a specific location, with background one should dig, and what one can find in the place. And in the end, 2 or 3 Greek letters that we have no idea what they mean. So, it's a treasure list. And now I want to read to you a small part of this text from the Copper Scroll, so you can understand a little better how it is written. In the ruin that is in the valley, pass over the steps that lead to the east 40 cubits. There is a chest of money, and its total weight is 17 talents in a sepulchral monument on the third course without gold ingots. And I will now leave on the screen the complete text of the Copper Scroll translated into Portuguese. And whoever wants to read all of it personally, just stop the video and read calmly. Quantity. The amount of treasures divided among these 64 places is gigantic. The list is in a measure called talent. 1 talent is equivalent to about 72.75 pounds, which in total would be 160 tons of treasures. The text is very mysterious. It uses code words. It never exactly says what is hidden in each of the places. It often talks about the quantity or weight of the objects. But in the text, there are other words that make us understand that it refers to the temple's treasures. For example, it talks about the priest's garments, the tithing utensils. It talks about sacred and consecrated objects. It talks about the book of the law, about libation vessels. And all this together makes us understand that it is about the Temple of Jerusalem. No scroll similar to the Copper Scroll has been found throughout the land of Israel, but a similar scroll was found precisely in Egypt. The Copper Scroll from Egypt belonged to Pharaoh Ramses II, and it was precisely a list of the temple treasures that Ramses had built. And a similar list was also found in Greece from the Temple of Apollo. Apollo, the list of treasures from the Temple of Apollo, also had at the end of the list these 3 Greek letters that no one knows how to decipher. So this text has elements similar to other texts that precisely talk about treasures from other temples. Since the discovery of the Copper Scrolls, many archaeologists and also antiquity thieves have taken this text this almost treasure map and started to go after it to find these tons of gold and antiquities, mainly linked to the temple and its utensils. And so far, no one has found anything. That is, as much as people followed these instructions, they were not enough to find the treasures. But one fascinating thing that is at the very end of the copper scroll is this phrase, "In the tunnel that was in Sechab, north of Kochlit," which opens to the north and has graves at its entrance. A copy of this text and its explanation and its measurements and the inventory of everything, item by item. This means that there is another copper scroll with even more details, explanations of exactly where you can find the treasures. So, until we probably find the third and final copper scroll, we won't be able to find the temple treasures. But according to what archaeology shows us, through the scrolls and other ancient findings and biblical and apocryphal texts, a good part of the treasures of the Temple of Jerusalem are still hidden under the stones of Israel in some unknown place. There are still many questions and many mysteries that have to be revealed through archaeology in Israel and throughout the region. Who knows? Maybe in the next few years, I hope I can come back here one day on the channel to tell you that maybe the first treasures have been found. But for now, we have these small pieces to form this big puzzle. The treasures remain hidden for now at least. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. A kiss and see you next time.